Treasure Planet, often regarded as one of Disney's biggest disasters they have ever produced. Now, I'm not starting this review off by calling this a horrible movie, especially when it does have a bit of a cult following. What I mean is that this is one of the very rare animated films by Disney that flopped at the box office. In fact, this is their biggest animated bomb to date, where it made the company lost an estimate $74 million. Unfortunately, this ended up taking a toll on Disney Animation, as the movie would become a notable example as to how they were at one of their lowest points during the 2000 decade. However, when looking at the film on its own now, it does seem to be a film that would hold a lot of promise at first glance. It was a passion project of beloved directors John Musker and Ron Clements. It's Disney's animated adaptation of the classic Robert Louis Stevenson novel, which they had success in the past with Walt's first fully live-action film and with The Muppets, and the sci-fi twist does look like it can spice up the story to deliver something that could stand out from all the other adaptations. But now that we're setting sail on this intergalactic adventure, will we find some hidden treasure on this forgotten ship? Or will this sink the same way it did at the box office? Let's find out! The story. As it is a Disney adaptation, it's no surprise that it isn't fully faithful to the source material. However, it still does manage to capture the spirit of the book, especially when it comes to the adventure of boldly going where no one has gone before to find untold treasures. Despite its different appearance, it still stays true to what it's all about and wants to have the audience come aboard for the ride on an epic treasure hunt while dodging some major obstacles. Granted, it oddly lacks any of the swashbuckling action for the kind of pirate movie that it is, but still contain a good amount of moments where the crew have to race to the finish line in order to at least come out alive and keep the intensity high to have audiences at the edge of their seats as they try to escape some of the galaxy's biggest dangers.
All hands fasten your lifelines!
Speaking of the galaxy, the additional sci-fi elements are a nice touch to the movie. Not only does it help give the feature its own identity compared to the other Treasure Island adaptations, but it is also key to the movie's world building, giving inspiration for the team at Disney to make a creative and immersive universe full of life and is highly populated in the same style as the Star Wars films. But despite its solid sense of adventure and a whole galaxy filled with great environments, there is one problem that causes the whole feature to not be as strong as it was hoping to be. You see, Treasure Planet, like most Disney films, is a more character-driven story, relying on its characters to take the helm and let their personalities be an important factor to how audiences could get into the picture. In this case, the characters, for the most part, are not so great, especially when it comes to the lead Jim Hawkins. I'll get more into this later, but many of them can range from just unlikable to feeling out of place and somewhat annoying. It might not seem like a big deal at first, but the issue is that for an adventure film like this, its adventure can only be as good as the people that are in it. And if the characters aren't that enjoyable to begin with, then it makes it a bit difficult to be engaging when the viewers have little care to what would happen to them in the first place. Granted, they can have their own strong moments, like the bond between Jim and John Silver giving the film some good heart, but at the same time, as a Disney movie, it wants to keep itself family-friendly by integrating some comedy that feels more out of place and juvenile for a picture like this.
I'm fluent in flatula, Jim. Took 2 years of it in high school.
The movie has the right materials to create a great story. It has the adventure, the world building, the big rewards, some of the action, and a unique spin. It just didn't have the right characters to do any of them justice. The animation. During the making of the movie, the animators had to follow a unique rule called the 70-30 law, meaning that 70% should present the traditional time period that's from the original book, and 30% should show the sci-fi elements. Out of all the things here, this is probably what this movie did best, creating a stunning-looking film that knows how to pay close attention to detail. If there is one major source of inspiration for the film's visuals, then it has to be the artwork by the Brandywine School, which defined the illustrated style of Treasure Island, and while the team still had to stay true to the masterclass Disney style, they did push their designs further to have the characters and the environments be more detailed and have the more down-to-earth elements be as realistic as possible, including their movements. But then there's the science fiction aspect that supplies a great amount of creativity in the character designs and backgrounds. Like I said before, the world building is very immersive thanks to the huge amount of detail put into the feature, presenting how an 18th century culture can adapt with advanced technology, and the other way around with how a wide variety of alien species can dress up for the period. But of course, as a more sci-fi oriented animated film of the early 2000s, CG is a key factor in the animation, and has the difficult task of mixing in with the traditional work to create a unified picture. And to its credit, it does work. Sometimes. I do get what the visuals would try to do, especially when creating a good amount of elaborate camera shots that move around to show the ship in several different angles. But the film somehow decided to try out different techniques to blend the CG with hand-drawn. The most effective moments are when the computers are associated with the characters and give them a cel-shaded look, rather it be with Ben or especially with John Silver, which combines the CGI cyborg parts with traditional animation supervised by Glenn Keane.
Now don't be too put off by this hunk of hardware. Whoa!
Then again, there are other times when the CG can look very well done, but out of place as well. This mostly happens when the characters are in 3D backgrounds, and with the way the camera constantly moves around, it does sometimes present that awkward image of the ship being inhabited by cardboard cutouts, even if the characters have that extra lighting to make it look like they have more depth. But while not all their effects hit their mark, it's one of those animations where if it got it right, then the animators pulled it off beautifully, and if nothing else, Treasure Planet is a great looking animated film. The characters. As I said before, the biggest issue with the feature is that the characters make it hard for the movie to be engaging, mainly because some of them are, well, not good. I might as well start off with the most problematic of them all, Jim Hawkins. Instead of being a young lad like in the book, the team at Disney turned him into an angsty and sour teenager with a bad case of daddy issues. Throughout most of the film, he always acts bitter, like he's just one step away from angrily running into his room and put up some depressing rock music to drain his sorrows. I get that he's traumatized from being abandoned by his father, but that's still not much of an excuse for having most moments with him feel unpleasant. And because he's the main character of all this, he's a strong case to why the movie isn't as engaging as it probably should be, because it follows the adventures of a kid who mostly behaves like a self-loathing brat.
Don't you get it? I screwed up. I mean, for 2 seconds, I thought that maybe I could do something right, but...
Thankfully, the other characters that surround Jim do help soften the blow. This is especially the case with John Silver, whom I debate is an underrated Disney character. Some could say that he's the villain of all this, since he's the pirate that later leads the mutiny so that he and his crew could get the treasure. However, with the bond he formed with Jim, treating him like the son he never had, Silver becomes conflicted with what's most important for him, either the treasure or the boy. There is also Captain Amelia, the stern captain of the RLS Legacy with the great wit of Emma Thompson, and Doppler, the astronomer and family friend of the Hawkins, whose comedy actually works thanks to a great performance delivered by David Hyde Pierce.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I have a lot of help to offer astronomically.
But while he can provide some decent humor, the other comic reliefs don't. In fact, with the way they try to be funny in this more sober epic, they're responsible for the moments that feel out of place. Like, yes, Morph can be cute and fun to see his transformations, but it's too obvious that he's meant for the crowd that's younger than the possible target audience. And Ben somehow has this logic where he thinks that the louder he shouts, the funnier he somehow is. Yes, he does have a point to the plot to ultimately get to the treasure, but the execution just makes him sound like a desperate attempt to be like the genie from Aladdin. Seriously, who would believe that speaking louder somehow makes what you say more valid? It's just... Why is that camera on? Hold on a sec. I'm not saying that the characters suck here. There are a few that are well written and some that provide some good voice acting. But when you have a bad lead and some unnecessary comic reliefs, they can certainly hinder the feature. They don't ruin it entirely, but they do keep this movie away from letting out its true potential. Treasure Planet is a great example of a movie that is good, but not great. It has a lot of strong qualities that make this a well-crafted film, but there's just some elements that keep it away from having this be among the ranks of the Disney classics. The story has the right amount of adventure and heart, but it's not as engaging as the Robert Louis Stevenson novel. The animation is spectacular to watch, but some of the CGI doesn't blend well with the 2D. And some of the characters are enjoyable with some great performances, but others, especially the lead, are responsible for weakening the movie more than enhancing it. With the kind of reputation that it has as a Disney film, my recommendation is that it is worth watching at least once just to have the experience of knowing what it is. I can't guarantee if you'll come out either liking it or not, but again, at least it'll allow you to say that you saw it. Did it deserve to be Disney Animation's biggest bomb? Not really. There was a lot of ambition that was obviously put into it, and on its own, it is a solid movie, but there are better treasures to be found from Disney. Hey guys, this is Animan, and I want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to Peyton Michael, whose amazing support on Patreon allowed him to get some amazing rewards, including this one, where he got to go and ask me to review Treasure Planet. And honestly, it was very interesting to look into this movie. Not just to go and watch the film itself and do a review on it, but even with my other show, Animation Look Back, to really look into the history of it. Like, to see how this was this long-awaited, ambitious project by John Musker and Ron Clements, who spent years trying to get it off the ground and spent even more years trying to go and actually make the movie. And yet, this ended up turning out to be their biggest box office bomb, losing $74 million, and even to this day, it is nowhere near the ranks of the Disney classics, both in terms of its quality and even its popularity is way far off from it, even though it does have a bit of a cult following. But honestly, really thinking about it, I actually do have a bit of a theory to why that would be the case. Why Treasure Planet is nowhere near in the same leagues as some of the big animated classics, especially released during that time. Stuff like The Lion King or Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid and stuff like that. And honestly, it really stems from the fact that Disney at the time was being a little bit more experimental, and they really wanted to try to dive deep into the action-adventure genre, more so than just following their usual formula that they would do with their animated musicals. And the reason why that is more of an issue is mainly because Disney had a bit of a hard time trying to combine elements that would please adults and combine elements that would go and please kids. Like, for example, let's take a look with Treasure Planet. Now, it is a very solid film on its own, but one of the biggest issues is the fact that The two pleasing factors don't really blend well together, and it often feels like one seems more out of place when paired up with the other. Where you got the action-adventure element, where those moments are a lot more for adults, and these are moments that are meant to be taken very seriously and really gear up, really crank up the intensity. But then you would have the elements for kids, and that's where most of the comedy would come in. Now, I'm not saying that this is not a funny film at all, because there are some pretty humorous moments, especially with Doppler, but then you would have times like with Morph or with Ben, and those characters, they feel like they're trying to please the kids, like a younger crowd than the target audience for like the action in this film. So at that point, it makes it a little bit difficult trying to figure out who is this movie for? Is it geared more towards adults or geared more towards kids? So there is a little bit of that confusion of who really is the target audience of this movie, and ultimately it kind of makes it feel like there is that air of this film trying to please everyone, and yet it ended up pleasing no one. And keep in mind, it's not just Treasure Planet that is this case here. There are a few other movies that are in the same way, especially when Disney would make more action or adventure-oriented animated features that go outside of the musical format. Stuff like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, or even The Black Cauldron. Those are two great examples of that. But then again, musicals can also fall into that trap as well. Pocahontas really comes into mind, where they would fall into that issue as well. And I would debate a little bit The Hunchback of Notre Dame can also be problematic with that issue for some people. Not necessarily for me personally, because I love that film. But this is pretty much to say that that's my theory onto why is it movies like Treasure Planet don't end up becoming as big as many of the other Disney films. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't necessarily mean that these are bad films. Like, Treasure Planet is nowhere near in the same leagues as something like Chicken Little. It is still a very well-crafted film, and the animation is still gorgeous to look at. But overall, though, it is understandable as to why it never really caught on to become like a massive phenomenon as much as the other Disney films. Not even being like The Emperor's New Groove, where it didn't really make much money back when it was released in theaters. It wasn't really that popular, and then suddenly its popularity grew as time would move on. So that's a little bit of my explanation on to seeing why Treasure Planet never really caught on as many of the other Disney films. But again, that's just my theory. So with that said, I think now it is time we can move past Treasure Planet, and now it is time that we shall go into a Patreon request. Yes, this time I got another one, and don't worry though, there is a perfect explanation for it, and this time around it shall be from Ryan Walterson. So I would just like to go and say that if you guys would like to be like Peyton or Ryan, and you would like to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards at the same time, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you guys would like to go and suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is just write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Alright, so now with that said, you might be wondering, what is it that Ryan suggests me to go and review? What is it that he made me request that really made me switch up my format with Animat's Classic Reviews? Well, one thing that I will say right now, and that this is going to be a new thing for the Classic Reviews, is that now, for the requested ones that I would get from Patreon, they're going to be in the even months instead of the odd months. That way, it will go and open the doors for me to go and review movies that would actually coincide with some holidays that would be during that month. And this is especially the case with this one, where, don't worry though, even though this is another Patreon request, this is something that a lot of people have been asking me to do, and something that a lot of people are very familiar with, because this isn't just an animated feature. This is actually more of a calamity. A calamity ever so great that happened when two holidays met by mistake.
And Doctor, again, with the greatest possible respect, zip your howling screamer.